The NATO Secretary General and other European leaders say Russia has suffered tremendous losses and has not been able to gain substantially for some time now. Does that mean Moscow no longer threatens Europe, especially Ukraine's neighbors like Poland? I'm Hassan Abdullah, and I talked to Polish Deputy Foreign Minister Marcin Bosacki one-on-one. At the Munich Security Conference, the NATO Secretary General, he talked about the huge losses that Russians have incurred, and also the fact that the Russians have not been able to make any substantial gains for some time now. Does that mean that Russia no longer poses a serious threat to Europe beyond Ukraine?
Unfortunately, to the contrary. First, take a look what Russia's goal in this war and further to the west are. And they were stated in the famous Russia's letter and memorandum from December 21, 2 months before they fully attacked Ukraine. And that was not only the future of Ukraine, that was also the demand to withdraw all NATO troops to the borders of pre-1997, so the first NATO enlargement. It was also demand to remove bases and armory of US and NATO forces in Central Europe. So we in Central Europe know that Russia's goal, as stated many times by Putin himself, are to conquer again, at least politically, if not militarily, Central Europe, which Poland is, of course, the most important and biggest country in.
Given where the situation stands at the moment, would Poland support the use of hard power for Ukraine to strengthen its position and push the Russians back? Or are you supportive of apparently what the suggestions coming from across the Atlantic, which the Ukrainians see as putting them in a very compromised position where they probably have to compromise on nearly 20% of their territory? What's Poland's position on this at the moment?
Any hard bargains and difficult compromises which Ukraine chooses to make, we will support. So if Ukraine says, yes, the current line of contact, so the current front line, could be acceptable for us, for Ukraine, as the starting point for the ceasefire and then maybe a peace treaty. But we, Ukraine, cannot give up fortresses in western Donbass, which are still unconquered, and probably at this pace, Russia would conquer them in 3 or 4 years only. We support them. We support Ukraine. We also support them when they say that they want to have a say in the future of their country, so that any prospects of integrating into Western structures cannot be forbidden for them, and that the ceasefire or peace treaty must give them a chance, if not a guarantee, to defend themselves from possible future Russia's invasion again. Remember, Ukraine was given 30 years ago in Budapest a clear, full security guarantees in terms of its independence and borders by US, Great Britain and France. Of course, those guarantees, and Russia, of course, those guarantees are now only a piece of paper because Russia violated international agreements, including Budapest Accords, but also the big allies from the West were not efficient enough to secure Ukraine's territorial integrity. So, to put a long story short, Probably Ukraine needs to compromise, but it cannot compromise the future of its country as an independent and Western-oriented one.
But if there's a compromise over 20% of its territory, and if, for example, the United States accepts that as the status quo, perhaps going towards de jure acceptance at some point, wouldn't that be a victory for Russia?
It depends. The reason for this war for Russia was to prevent Ukraine from becoming a fully independent state which has a say in its future as a member of international organizations and being associated with the Western structures, especially EU. And remember, in 2014, when Russia started this war, annexing Crimea and then attacking Donbass, nobody in Ukraine was talking about joining NATO. It came only later, as a stated goal of Ukrainian state. If Russia gains, hopefully temporarily, 20% of Ukraine's territory, but Ukraine, the rest of Ukraine, 80% of Ukraine, has a future in being a democratic, parliamentary, and Western state. It's probably a compromise which Ukrainian state and society can accept. Without this part of being admitted to the West, probably that would be really a win for Russia and defeat for Ukraine.
Now, the threat perceptions vis-à-vis Russia are very different. If you look at the United States and if you look at Europe, many European leaders have been talking about strategic autonomy. Where does that stand at the moment? Is Europe in a position to pull it off if the United States, for example, pursues a position which you see, and Poland being a neighbor of Ukraine, as detrimental to your national security?
Sure. The very frank and short question is, Europe is much more ready than it was 4 years ago, but is not fully ready yet. We have much more capacities, we have stronger armies, especially Poland, Baltic states, states of Scandinavia, Romania, and we are much better coordinated within European allies. But no, if, God forbids, US would have withdrawn its forces from the NATO eastern flank now, that would be at significant cost to our security for sure. Saying that, we, Poland, really believe in NATO as such and European strengthening of European autonomous vector of security and defense policy, but as a complementary to NATO, not as a replacement for NATO. We really believe in NATO, but we also believe that European allies need to strengthen European part of NATO and I'm not saying EU, but European security, because we believe that in European security, not only EU members, but also Great Britain, Norway, and Turkey is involved and very much needed.
At this point in time, do the Europeans have a minus United States contingency plan in place?
No. Of course, each of our countries has many war planning options, including fighting on our own. It's basic truth about each country's military planning. But as I said before, now we really need American forces, and we are happy that the tone, but also the substance of American words and behavior is rather going in the direction we envisage and very much hope for, which is that US will not withdraw its forces completely from Europe. So far, you all only have not even a full brigade of forces being withdrawn from Romania by US. With all this, rumors and gossips and some comments on US side, actually, this fiscal year, US is investing in Poland, in its bases in Poland, $500 million of US dollars. To enhance and develop airfields, barracks, and bases for US military in Poland. So, and when you really take a close look at American, especially Secretary Rubio comments in this year's Munich conference, it's much more reassuring for us Europeans and especially us Poles than it was a year ago.
Minister, thanks for talking to TRT World.
Thank you very much.